Isn't college where you form your views, you have lively debate?
Not only that, but our nation was founded upon free speech. If we can't have free speech, debate, and conversations on our college campuses, then we have undermined the integrity of the academic system completely. So yes, we need to bring back free speech and debate on our college campuses if we're going to have real education.
Welcome to Straight to the Point. I'm your host, Representative Joe Diorsi. In a world of long-windedness, I'm here to deliver you the Capitol News in 10 minutes or less. So, let's get straight to the point. Joining me from sunny Florida today is political commentator and women's sports and free speech advocate, Olivia Krolczyk. Olivia, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me on.
So let's talk first girls' sports. It's so strange if we were to go back even just 5 years, Olivia, and you were to tell me this would be a hot-button political issue. What am I talking about? I'm talking about biological men competing with girls, joining them in their locker rooms. Why has this become a hill that the ideological left is willing to die on?
I have no idea because it seems like such a crazy fight to be fighting. It's a common sense issue, so I don't know why they chose this to pinpoint all of their energy onto. But it is crazy because 5 years ago when I was competing in cross country and track, not once did that ever pop into my head worrying about men competing against me. But today I have, 10 people every single week reaching out to me, asking me for help because they are being forced to compete against men. They're being forced to change in the same locker room as men at their schools, their clubs, their organizations, things like that. So it's a very big issue happening all across the nation.
So I often try to put myself in the shoes of people advocating for it. This one's extremely difficult to do, but I often pay attention to the arguments. I think there's a majority of, and I'll give you a number, New York Times poll from earlier this year, 79% of Americans, almost 8 out of 10, do not think that biological men should be competing with girls. 67%, two-thirds of Democrats believe that as well. So Pennsylvania, there's a lot of battleground states as it relates to this fight for women's sports. As you know, Olivia, President Trump and Secretary McMahon has been active in really pressing the states to comply with Title IX law. Am I correct in saying that states that fail to uphold this are actually not just betraying the trust of parents and girls, but they're actually defying the law?
They absolutely are, and that's why when he signed those executive orders, it stated that they would lose their federal funding. So yes, they are of course going to lose their federal funding if they allow men into women's sports and locker rooms. We're even seeing issues in states like Washington, in the city of Seattle. There are literal directors or principals, whoever's in charge of like school districts as a whole, who are now actively either going against federal law or state law because they contradict each other. So either way, these people are going to lose. No matter what decision they choose to make, they are going to be punished. And that's why it's just becoming a very difficult issue for them to make decisions on.
It's a strange political hill to die on. It's a moral issue to me and you, I'm sure, but it is forced to be a political one. New York Times polling, 79%, almost 8 out of 10 Americans oppose biological men in girls' sports. 67% of Democrats, two-thirds of Democrats. Governor Shapiro, sometimes I like to call him Mr. Moderate. He likes to posture as the centrist. He pleases both sides. He talks about bipartisanship all the time. And he called me and other representatives in senators in the state of Pennsylvania extremists this week for fighting for girls. What's your message to him?
Extremists for fighting for the biological truth. Maybe he never took a 4th grade science class. I'm not sure. But there's a reason that this is a common sense issue. And there's a reason that we saw Donald Trump win the last election, because people are tired of liberals pushing this agenda. They're tired of the obvious biological advantages that men have against women being diminished or just, being put in the back, like, oh, they don't exist. They very well do exist. It's unfair to women, to girls. It's unfair not only in sports, but in the locker rooms, in academics. It's affecting people in their scholarships. So when we have women who are applying for, let's say, women in STEM scholarships, those are scholarships specifically for biological women that are now being given to men who identify as women. So it's not just affecting the sports, not just affecting the Olympics or the high levels. It's affecting everyone across the board.
So sometimes I hear the argument as I'm out on the front here in Pennsylvania, along with some great legislators, women like Representative Barb Gleim, who've started this fight way before me. I hear arguments, strange arguments, like there's not too many girls that have to deal with this. This is a non-issue. You're wasting a high proportion of your time dealing with something that barely affects your constituents. You travel across the country. You hear stories. Is this that small of an issue, or is it increasingly affecting our girls?
In 2024, I had 542 people reach out to me asking for help. They were either being forced to compete against men, change in front of men in their locker rooms, or were being unfairly canceled or punished in their academics for talking about it. 542. That's just people asking me for help on my Instagram DMs. That's not including the ones that went to hidden requests that I don't see. That's not including on TikTok, on X, on email. That's not including all of the messages that Paula Scanlon or Riley Gaines get. 542 people reached out to me asking for help in 1 year. That's more people asking for help than there are days in the year. So this is not a small issue. It's happening across the board. And you have to consider in events when someone is placing, let's say, I'm trying to explain this for people who didn't compete in sports, but let's say top 8 qualify for states. If a man placed 8th, now that 9th place person doesn't get to go to states. It's not just affecting that person, though. It's affecting the person in 16th place who didn't qualify for nationals or whatever it may be. It always affects more than one person.
Yeah, and as a former athlete myself, that resonates with me. As you move up in the level of competition, the margin for error shrinks. That could mean a state medal. That could mean a college scholarship. College scholarships are important for the future success of any person, so it is a big deal. UPenn was one of the recent dominoes to fall. They complied with Trump's executive order, and as you mentioned earlier, there was a threat of losing federal funding. Perhaps they just were reading the writing on the wall. But Pennsylvania, as I said, is a battleground state. It's a purple state. Do you see this issue, girls' sports, as maybe an issue that will be important this next election, not just in the midterm, but the next presidential election?
Unfortunately, I see it getting a lot worse before it gets better. Like I said, we have a lot bigger issues that are coming about where we see, for example, in the state of Washington, these people who are being forced to either defy state or federal law. So I don't think the issue is going to completely disappear. And like I said, it's not just affecting the sports level, it's affecting the academics level. I mean, someone like me, for example, I was at University of Cincinnati, and as a chemistry major, I was forced to take a diversity, equity, and inclusion course as a chemistry major and was failed for talking about men and women's sports, for sharing Riley Gaines' story. I received a 0% because it was bigoted, transphobic, and hateful, and I was a white supremacist. So I can't even talk about the issue without being punished. So no, I don't see the issue going away. I see the liberals or those on the left trying to cover it up more and be more discreet with how they punish people or give backlash, but I don't see it going away.
It's a perfect segue to higher ed and the topic of free speech. I have a bill in the House. I introduced it last session, reintroduced it this session, called the Free Speech in Higher Education Bill, which would endeavor to eliminate bias reporting systems, which I'm sure you've heard of the bias reporting systems. They quell free speech on campus with this anonymous reporting. Tell me in greater detail about your experience at Cincinnati. Was this a term paper and you were given the ultimatum, change the verbiage? It's good otherwise. Good arguments made. Good substance. But was it a woke professor that just gave you an ultimatum?
Very woke. She changed her pronouns to they, them halfway through the semester, so what was I expecting? But I had 3 options that fulfilled this graduation requirement, the DEI requirement, and it was LGBTQ activism, queer studies, and women's gender studies, so of course I chose that. It was a project on feminism worth half of my grade, and so I chose to write about women's sports. I thought that was very feminist of me. I don't even like calling myself a feminist at this point, but I submitted the paper and she said, Olivia, this is solid work, but the term biological woman is transphobic, exclusionary, and contributes to heteronormativity, which means being normal, I think, and gave me 0%. And I was ultimately forced to share my story online, not thinking it would blow up, but it did, and it gained national attention. And basically just threw me into this world of politics. But it didn't stop there. In January, I actually was giving a speech at the University of Washington in Seattle, their campus for Turning Point. I was giving a speech about my experience, about the importance of protecting free speech in higher education, and I was held hostage by 250 members of Antifa, the self-proclaimed anti-fascist group of Seattle, and was unable to give my speech. So it's happening on very severe levels.
So this is, I mean, you talk about, these violent, in some cases, protests. We had one at the University of Pittsburgh a couple of years ago with Michael Knowles. And then we've got the other side, which is, like I mentioned, the anonymous reporting. I can tattletale on you because in our civics class you shared a conservative viewpoint, and I'm triggered by that.
Yeah.
Both sides of the spectrum. This is the antithesis of college, is it not? Isn't college where you form your views, you have lively debate?
Not only that, but our nation was founded upon free speech. If we can't have free speech, debate, and conversations on our college campuses, then we have undermined the integrity of the academic system completely. So yes, we need to bring back free speech and debate on our college campuses if we're going to have real education.
Yeah, so lightning round question here. I want to ask you about Generation Z, of which you're a member. I'm ever interested in this generation. And you mentioned the atmosphere in academia. One of the trends that we're seeing with Generation Z is that less Gen Z kids are going to college. My hunch is that they find less value in it. Another thing you're seeing is church attendance with Gen Z is spiking. Now, this, Olivia, was a generation 5 years ago I had little hope for.
Yes.
The third thing is that, especially with men, I've seen data, Gen Z men are trending hard Republican. So I really am encouraged by Generation Z. What can you tell me, not just politically, but societally, as some of these young people replace boomers in the marketplace?
Well, you know what's happening? All of these kids my age are seeing their future, and they want to have wives who stay at home and raise their kids because they're seeing what happens when they send their kids to daycare. They're seeing what happens when you fall away from Christ, when you fall away from religion. And they realize that, following Christ and going to church and having all of those traditional values and morals, that's the traditional family. And who doesn't want the traditional family? Well, other than liberals. But men want that. They want to be able to provide and, take care of their family. That's natural. And women want to be able to provide and take care of their children. That's also natural. And I think that Gen Z is just seeing a shift. I think it's being pushed on social media by conservatives. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's nice that we're seeing people realize you don't have to go to school to succeed. You can go to trade school. You can start your own business. I think that's important. No one wants to be, told what to do every single day by a boss. No one wants to be told, oh, you have to follow these DEI quotas or initiatives to keep your job. No one wants that control over them. So we're seeing a big shift away from that.
Yeah. So she is Olivia Krolczyk. She's a national political commentator and women's sports and free speech advocate. Olivia, thanks for joining STTP.
Thank you so much.
This has been Straight to the Point. Visit repjod.com/mypodcasts.